Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Totally Unscripted. We are live, and today I'm delighted to be joined by my usual co-host Steve Webster, but also we have Riël Notermans from Zaps, and we also have Grant Timmerman from Google. So, hi guys.
Hey, Martin. And
Hey,
Steve.
Martin.
Hello.
And Steve.
So, in this episode of Totally Unscripted, we're looking at kind of Apps Script development, and there's been a lot of recent developments that make development of app scripts away from the IDE possible. And so a couple of those things include the fact that now the latest ChromeOS allows you, if you've got a compatible device, to run and install Linux apps. This opens up a world of opportunities in terms of your production of script projects. So what we're going to do today is Riël's going to start off with a demo of installing stuff on Chrome OS so that you can do local app script development. And then Grant is going to start showing you some of the things that you can do not only on Chrome OS, but any local machine that you can run a node server on. So Grant, do you want to, Riël, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yes, well, you all know recently Linux was announced on ChromeOS. So we are working on ChromeOS for several years now with our company, and really only ChromeOS devices. We really like it. And we did a lot of development on it as well. But usually we're using IDEs on the web, C9, sometimes some, and it worked pretty well for us. Actually, the Google Apps Script environment was always on the web, and we did a lot of work there too. But for a few weeks ago, there was this Linux environment, and we tried it out. And actually, it's pretty nice to do local development on Chrome OS, and it works even better than I thought. So now that it's in stable channel for lots of Chromebooks already, I would think it's nice to just pick a new Chromebook and show you guys how to get to install VS Code, install clasp, install something to have some Google Apps Script code highlighting. That's always easy in development. And just install Linux and see the whole process, and how I think I'll also want to mention how well it's made on Chrome OS. It feels polished, and I really like it. So I have this Chromebook. It's just simple Acer. But it's pretty new. It's nothing on there, so I hope everything goes as planned. So you can follow the screen. It's on full screen now, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay. So, well, Chrome. You have to make sure you're on the latest version. I think it's 69. And just go to your settings, and you will find. When you scroll down. Oh, just a second. Here it says Linux in beta. So the first thing you really want to do is to turn it on and install it, and just wait a bit. So usually this goes pretty fast. I'm not sure how fast it goes in this device, but in between I can probably tell some stuff. So it's actually installing a sort of Debian version of Linux. So a lot of packages and a lot of software is really available on the internet. And I will show you also in a second how you install this stuff without using the command line, because lots of people just don't like it. And you really don't need it for installing applications. That's what I said. That's what I like about it being so polished.
Had you experienced Linux before using it on Chrome OS?
Yes, actually, yes, quite a lot, because when you're doing development, for example, with Polymer or Firebase, you are always having a Linux shell.
Yeah.
Most of the time. But it has been a while to have it on a device, actually. And sometimes I think this might be the way to bring Linux to desktop computers, but that's what they always tried with many Linux versions. But okay, starting. actually, when you install Linux and you start ChromeOS, it's not booted up yet. So you have to use it like one time if you turn on your laptop or Chromebox to actually launch this virtual machine that Linux is running in. So it's doing this right now. And you also see it in your Files app. I will show you in a moment.
Right.
That it has this extra section where you can put files in your Linux environment.
Is there a list that tells us which Chromebooks can use this?
Yes, it's somewhere. Actually, I used the list. I'm not sure where we can find it. I will find the link, Martin, and send it to you for afterwards. That's why I found this Chromebook to test it. Actually, I bought it like 2 days ago for home use.
I think is it based on the chip type processor?
Yes, as far as I know, it needs a newer version of the kernel, the Linux kernel, where it can actually run. Correct me if I'm wrong, Grant. Maybe you know a bit more about it as I. But I think it needs version 4, and they're working on 3.18 now. So it's maybe getting Linux as well, some older devices. But the newer ones are all supporting it, and all the Chromebooks of this year and the Chromeboxes of this year, as far as I know, they all support it. It's actually taking a bit longer than I was used to.
Steve, I think you've said you'd gone through this process on your Pixelbook, so that's another device you can take that can do this.
Yes. I followed the instructions that Riël had before this hangout, and it worked quite well. Took a little while to go through the process, as we're seeing here, but everything went smoothly.
There we go. And when it's installed, you'll get a Linux shell. So there we are. So now it's installed, and actually it's also booted up now. And I always see it when I go to the Files application. Just go here, Files. I can close the shell now. We don't need it. So this is actually Play Files is for Android. And Linux Files is my Linux files, but there are no files in there. So the first thing that we actually want to do is install Visual Studio. I'm doing Visual Studio installing first. Let's copy code. Because it also gives me a shell to work in. Go to the website. So what I do is I download this Debian Ubuntu file.
So those not familiar with VS Code, it's open source and it's free, so there's no cost.
I think it's generally people like it, as far as I know.
It seems to be the editor of choice right now, as far as I've picked up off the wire.
So the file is here in downloads. What I do is I put it on, just drag it to Linux files. Just wait until it's copied. So I hope you actually followed it, but I put the file into the Linux partition actually. What I can do now is just install it, or just double click it now. And it says install the application. Okay, fine. Installation started, and you'll see that it's nicely bringing up the installation of the application. I think many Linux distributions can learn from this. So you see, you don't need a command line now to get the application and install them on your ChromeOS device.
I'm just thinking some of our colleagues have got Chromebooks and can't connect to printers via USB, and I'm wondering.
I know not all hardware is attached now, and it has no graphical acceleration yet, but
right.
I'm pretty sure things are evolving quite fast on this. So we wait. We probably need to cut out some parts. Oh, we are finished. Of course, this is not the fastest machine. Good. Here it says app is available in your terminal, but like VS Code also has an option that it installs itself on the launcher. So you really only have to go here. You see Visual Studio Code is there with a nice icon. Click it. Okay. This one again. There we are.
And so should also say that VS Code is available for other platforms as well. So I run it on the Windows. So it's available for Mac as well. So you got full platform support.
Now let's open a folder. It's file picker. Sure, if you can make. Let's just create a folder to work in. Let's call it clasp. Clasp. Oh, okay. So now actually we are in a project. Can you see it this way? I should make it full screen. Maybe it's better.
Yeah.
So it's an empty folder actually. So now we're ready to install Clasp. And we need to install some other stuff. And you can open a console in VS Code by just pushing Control Escape. Control tilde, I'm sorry. That's Escape. And it opens a terminal screen here. So you can actually run your commands. And to run Clasp, we need Node.js. And I think it's not installed. No, it's not installed by default. So actually, I always install Node by using nvm. Just copy the code to install it. Just go to the site. I will share these links with you.
Yeah. NVM's a good package. Get the Node version manager. I use it all the time, especially for detecting which version of NPM you're using.
Yeah. So actually, how to install it is it's a matter of copy paste. So actually, I'm going. Actually, use Control-Shift-V to paste something in here. Otherwise, it. Yes. And it will install NVM, and we can use NVM stands for Node Version Manager, as Grant says, and we can install Node. What Node version do you recommend actually for Claude?
I think, well, usually just use the latest version of Node. I think anything beyond 6
Okay,
is supported.
I will install for now 8 because it works well with Firebase functions as well. Not Node install, but NVM.
Yep.
Now we need to do these commands first. Otherwise, we have to restart the terminal. This is just that the NVM command is working the first time. NVM install, and just you can say install 8. It will install Node for you. In the meantime, I will get the link for clasp. VS Code. You see the Linux applications also just work nicely in a window on ChromeOS. So now we take Grant's manual to install clasp.
You can just ask her.
Yeah, just sudo npmi Google Clasp. Install it globally. So.
Yeah. Go. We don't need sudo here.
Yeah, I think for a Chromebook you don't need it. So.
We should mention that.
Yeah, I've always had the question. There's a blog post that states why you don't need sudo for npm, but you need thing, and it depends on environment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you even need sudo on this form of Linux shell actually.
Yeah. It makes clasp smaller, it looks like. It's taking a while.
Well, this is not the fastest machine.
Maybe, do you want to talk about what clasp is, or I can talk about it?
Yeah.
Sure.
We can wait for it to install.
Yeah, while we wait, so clasp stands for Command Line Apps Script Projects. It's the Apps Script command line tool that allows you to create, manage, write, and deploy app scripts using your terminal straight from the command line rather than using script.google.com. It was released earlier this year, and it's an open source tool available on GitHub under Google, and I'm the primary maintainer, and it's been evolving throughout the months.
Okay.
We'll see a demo of it right now.
Almost.
Almost.
Actually, to get started, I think it was clasp login we had.
Yep.
I'm not sure, because usually this works with a local host because it runs on the same machine, but with clasp on ChromeOS it doesn't, I think. See?
Okay. So you can log in with no local host.
Yeah, I know, but usually I do just.
I think I opened that ticket.
I new terminal and do curl, and then it's okay too.
Or you can do that.
Actually, so I'm going to this, and clasp just knows that I'm logged in out on the other terminal. So, but you can use no local host. But it's strange that it's not working on ChromeOS, because other like G-Cloud and stuff like that, you can authenticate this way as well. I think it's the port number or something like that. Maybe I should look into it. So to get this very small file, I think it's clasp init.
Clasp create.
Create.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I just want to show you is to show how you can get this app script autocomplete into VS Code. And after that, I think it's best that you just take over with your version and everyone has seen how to install Clasp. So we give the script a title, my script. I'm using another account here. Script.google.com. Oh. What was that? Where on my Gmail, the API is not enabled yet. So to use Clasp, you should enable the Apps Script API, and it's in script.google.com. And this actually says instellingen in Dutch, but it's settings. So now we go back to VS Code. Let's do it again. Script.
This is probably worth highlighting that a lot of this stuff is you just need to do once, and that's it. You've got VS Code installed, you've got Clasp installed. You can start scripting to your heart's content.
And you see that Clasp is creating some files here. So now we can actually create a new file like code.js. You actually see that now it's not showing anything like you are used to on the Apps Script interface. So you need to download the definitions for Google Apps Script. They are here. We can find them on npm. There's a package for that. You actually get pretty quickly used to using npm to install stuff, if you were never done that before.
Copy and paste is your friend.
Yes. So what we can do now to make this work is actually create a new file and just give it a name, Apps Script.js. And the only thing we put in here is import Google Apps Script to make VS Code know that you want to use it. Save it. And now if you use Drive app, it has your methods. Create file, get access, all the stuff you're used to. It's all there.
That's very nice.
So you can actually start coding app scripts like you are used to in Sites app. It's still there. Yeah. So it's well maintained, I guess. The issue now is, the last thing I want to say is that if you upload this code to Google Apps Script, it will add your AppScript.js file, and you actually don't want it. So you can add a new file again, and you can call it clasp ignore, and just add AppScript.js in there, and then Clasp will not upload it with it. And that's the single part you have to do. So if you have this set of files for each project, you copy them in there, and then you can start playing in scripting. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. Maybe Grant could help with this question too. When we talk about this Linux container, what are the boundaries? Does it prevent us from getting in trouble, installing malicious software, and things like that? Could you explain the boundaries of the container itself?
I can answer it. As far as I know, the container is totally isolated from the ChromeOS platform. Of course, you can install applications there and grant them permissions with your Google accounts, like I just did with Clasp. So they can do stuff on your Google account, like any other tool you grant permissions, but it's not possible for the container to get to other stuff on your Chromebook. So actually, it's possible to put multiple containers on the device and fire them up and do all kinds of things with them. So that's more advanced usage of this Crostini stuff. But they're totally isolated.
Okay, that's good to know. Thanks.
So, Riël, I think Grant will perhaps talk about this as
Yeah.
well. But obviously, you know, you've achieved a lot there, but you're out with the Apps Script IDE, so and so you don't have access to the debugger. As you've been developing in this way for a while, do you miss the debugger, or have you got a workflow for that?
I think the main advantage of the Apps Script interface is actually the play button for functions.
Yeah.
And if you write small scripts, then it's really advantage. But as soon as you're starting to write some more complicated code, then it's very nice to just put it here, start here, and do the fine-tuning actually in Apps Script. Just have them both open, code here, upload stuff, go to Apps Script, refresh the page, and do your testing. Actually, it works for bigger files. For small files, the interface of Apps Script just does what it needs to do. And I think we are pretty used to working there. But it definitely brings some new possibilities now, and creating more extensive scripts, and especially if you're building some client-side stuff as well, of course. HTML and some client-side JavaScript, where VS Code definitely outshines the Google Apps Script editor by any means.
So this is where you're creating HTML pages and using JavaScript.
Or use them both. For your Google Apps Script, for your GS files, just go to the Apps Script editor. But if you're working on, because many of us are working on client-side code and Apps Script code at the same time, because they're building interfaces, and just working on client-side code in Google Apps Script editor was bad. Not the Google Apps Script code itself, at least for me. So this is a big improvement. And of course, for all your other coding work on the Google Cloud Platform.
Yeah, so if you're mixing stuff up. We got a question from Alexander. He's saying, I'm not sure that importing types is necessary via VS Code itself.
So, I might chime in. So I don't think that you need to import the types, or maybe you need to import them once on the beginning of your file. But I think the editor should, once you do that, it loads the types, and it should automatically autocomplete. So I don't think creating a separate file might not be necessary.
Okay.
But that's just a small bit.
Actually, I never tested it. I once read I had to do it this way, so I just did it this way.
Cool.
So, Riël's kind of set us off with, looking at setting up ChromeOS and getting us going. Is there anything else, Steve, you want to add?
Nope, I'm good.
I'm seeing that it actually took me half an hour instead of 10 minutes. I actually thought it would take. So,
in the
sorry, Grant.
Magic of editing will be 10 minutes. So I've got another question coming in. This might be a good starting point for you, Grant. Alexander again is asking examples of how you can push code to 2 or more projects. Maybe we should start
2 or more
basic,
projects.
and build up to 2 or more projects.
Yeah.
The connection. I'm going out of the Hangout now, but I will leave. I will leave the live Hangout on to watch you guys.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Riël.
Yep. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so for pushing for multiple projects, right now there's no native class support. Right now in your clasp.json, you have the script ID, and so you could manually change that.
Right.
Some people also just move the files from like class.json or class1.json and class2.json, and then they move it to a mv class1.json to class.json. I think there's a GitHub issue asking for multiple scripts support, and that's something I think is very reasonable, very practical. And I think it's just a matter of how we implement it.
Sure.
But yeah, we should follow up on the GitHub issue, and I'm sure I could add that to Clasp so you can have more native support. Well, I'll present my screen. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Slide deck. So first I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Grant. I'm a developer platform engineer working at Google. I work on G Suite, so that's everything from Google Docs, Sheets, Slides. They have APIs, Google Drive, Gmail, etc. And in particular, I work a lot on Apps Script. So I maintain the GitHub samples for Google Apps Script on the GitHub org G Suite devs, as well as the command line tool clasp that came out earlier this year. So I want to show how you can use some of the more advanced features of clasp, including TypeScript with your Apps Script projects. So here I just have a simple slide deck. And you can just go to Tools and Script Editor, and you can see I have a simple Apps Script project. It's just basic Apps Script and some HTML. So this demo, you first have to say OK. You can manage your slides. It basically allows you to create a sidebar in which you can translate text from one language to another. So let's say I want this in French. It'll translate the content into French, or translate it into Chinese. And so you can see Google's obviously translates to Google, but the rest translates to Chinese. And so that's powered by this code. Let's say so let's say you're in this project. I actually pulled it, so you can.
Can you bump up the font size?
Yeah. So here I cloned the project, which you can just go to File, Project Properties, see the script ID. I cloned it there. And then you can see it creates a clasp.json as well as code.js and sidebar.js and the app script manifest. To install types, as we saw before, you can just npm install types/Google Apps Script. And then you'll get this node modules folder. And so you can just go open code. This is Visual Studio Code. And you'll see your code here. And you can also see like some variables are not used. That's a feature of Visual Studio Code. And syntax highlighting. So let's say I want to complete this. Since I've installed the types, I get all this auto-completion. Sort of just like the editor. add item. Dot add UI. So I just copied that code. But you can see all the, you don't have to completely fill out the methods. They'll all autocomplete for these types. So let's say you have a GS file, but so you can see like, this is declared but never used. So let's say you have a GS file, but you want to use Lambda functions or async wait or some fancy ES6, ES7, and ES8, or just TypeScript. Also, the only thing you need to do is change your file extension from code.gs or JS to TS, and you'll see the file doesn't change, but you'll be able to say, hey, this is a constant, and if I try to say set it to something else, type Visual Studio Code, as well as other editors will say, you cannot do this, it's a read-only property because it's constant. Let's see, you can convert this to an arrow function, as well as all of your functions into arrow functions if you like that syntax. And let's see. Also, I have so this is the project Google Clasp. I have a guide on TypeScript on all the different features which you can use with your Apps Script project. So, so TypeScript, first of all, it's a superset of JavaScript, which can compile down to plain Apps Script. So it's a bit of an advanced layer on top of Apps Script, but on top of JavaScript, but it allows you to do some cool things like you can have arrow functions, optional structural typing, classes, type inference. So the identifier will be identified as a certain type. You can have interfaces, so you can say this method must return some object of this certain shape, and a bunch more. TypeScript support was released, I think, 2 months ago or something. And allows for existing projects as well as new projects to use TypeScript. So as I just showed, you can simply just rename your file from GS to TS. And in fact, when you class push, you'll see all the files. It's pushing code.ts, which is right here. And when you actually open that file, you'll see that you'll have these 2 lines that support node modules, so that you don't, if there's any module that is using exports or module, those keywords, it won't break the AppScript compiler. But the code will look relatively similar. You'll see there's vars instead of the consts, which I think we said there. And the code will be pretty much the same.
So I guess it's been announced that Google Apps Script is going to move to, I think it's the V8 engine, which will be ES6 or 8.
Yeah,
compliant. So I guess it really makes sense if if you start using TypeScript now, you're essentially going to get the benefits of when the V8 engine comes in. I'm guessing that when you compile the scripts, it'll use you know, the latest coding conventions that work within the script editor?
Yeah. So once ES6 and V8 is ready, it's already been announced at Google Cloud Next. Then instead of transpiling this from TypeScript to ES3, we can transpile it to ES6 or ES7, the latest version of V8.
So a great way of future-proofing. I imagine, you know, Google will obviously continue to support older scripts, but to get the benefits of some of the new ways that you can do stuff and make your code readable.
Yeah. So it's sort of similar to the way that the web has progressed beyond what browsers can support currently. Pretty common in the web world where you can code out a feature version of the language spec, but you can make sure that you're supporting browsers such as like IE 8, etc. So I'm hoping that TypeScript will be able to support local Apps Script development outside of script.google.com, and perhaps even help create even like a library system that will allow for better sharing of code with auto completion.
So we've got a question from Rudy about when the translation happens, will the GS extension go away to be JS, or will it stay the same?
Yeah, so for the translation, to use TypeScript, clasp only reads the TS files and then transpiles those. But you'll see in the script editor, all the files are still GS files. And so the actual extension is still GS at this point. I'm not sure about when V8 is coming. I don't know what the convention will be there.
Sure.
I have a question. When it comes to version control, like GitHub, central repository for code, do you have a recommendation or a thought of which version to store in the repository? Because I guess I'm kind of thinking of the pushing back to the Google Drive is more of a publishing process rather than central repository. Do you have a comment on that?
So as to which like where to push your Apps Script files?
Yeah, so in other words, if I have the TypeScript version, for lack of a better way of saying it, should that version be pushed to the central repository?
Yeah, so ideally the TypeScript version is the source of truth for your project. And then, like for example, if you try to, for example, we could just copy this example and let's say just put it up above. Some of these might not work. Actually, I think that should be fine. If we do that, name is, I'll just skip this example. But let's say we try to push that code, which has some fancy classes, types, and spread operators, etc. When we open it, we'll see that the code is transpiled. It doesn't really look very pretty. And so, like, for example, this was an enum, this color. It was, so for example, it'll allow for auto-completion like this, blue, red, or green. And this enum construct was transpiled into this sort of uglier mess, which we don't, you probably don't want to hand maintain this in your repository.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
you wouldn't push this code. You'd want to push this code.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
It's a good question.
And I guess if you're using clasp, you're already in, becoming familiar with a command line, so easy enough to start doing Git commands as well.
Yeah. So it does. So like local editors, I think there's a Git plugin where you don't need to know the Git commands. You can just sync to GitHub bucket or whichever source control you want. But yeah, for example, if you're using clasp is only a command line tool. It's not an extension right now. And so it does require a little bit of, it's more advanced, requires a little bit of knowledge.
So I suppose that's one of the things just that is useful to highlight as well, that VS Code comes with a lot of extensions. There's a whole marketplace of bits and pieces that you can add, so you can get additional functionality into VS Code, so you can drop in GitHub stuff.
Yes, that's a good point. So one of the benefits of using your own editor is that you are able to leverage the extensions that the community have built. For example, I use ESLint, which is a common JavaScript linter, which detects stylistic errors. There's also a beautifier, which will like format your code. And like things like Markdown lint, IntelliSense for NPM.
It's a slightly unrelated question, that one of the comments we got in for the show was tips on inline documentation. Does VS Code have a JS doc package that you can use?
A JS doc? Yeah, so for example, like the JS doc properties of the spec are like listed here.
All right, so they're already.
So yeah, for example, like the app param is common.
Yeah.
Which you provide the type, and then it'll probably fail because there's no two parameters. But I think if you try to see a usage of this, it might see it'll show the opens a sidebar in the document, Java doc param. So that's very useful. I wanted to show one more thing that I actually was working on last night. So I don't know if it'll work, but let's try it. So, so Stackdriver is one of the primary ways to get debug logs into with your source control, and logging is very important for all languages. One of the things I've been working on is trying to make it easier to log within clasp, and basically have a log system where you can just see the logs being streamed. So let me see. Let me make sure it's set up. correctly. So the way to set up clasp logs, I'll do it manually. First, you need in your clasp.json, you need to have your project ID. And the way to get your project ID is to, currently you have to use the script editor and go to resources, cloud platform project. Here you'll see the project ID prefixed with project-ID. And you copy it here. And then once you've done that, you can, actually, let's just watch. So you can stream your logs into your terminal. Let's see if this works. So it'll periodically look. So let's just do a hello world. So running a function which will use console.log, which goes to the stack driver logs. It should hopefully, probably the next one, takes about 10 seconds in my experience. But you can see log hello was run and produced the output hello. And so you can, this will like query the stack driver logs every 10 seconds or every 6 seconds or something. And you could have some like complicated you can also stream as JSON. So if you had some JSON, it'll show the full output as JSON in case you wanted that. So here, I think we can just like copy and paste this if we really wanted to hardcore debug. Yeah. So that's a feature I built last night, actually.
So is it being pushed?
It's live. Yeah, it's pushed. Should be live. If not, I'll check it right after this. But
nice
hopefully it'll make.
Nice to have a totally unscripted exclusive there.
Yeah,
it's like the banner at the bottom. Breaking news.
Yeah, so that's the first ever demo of stack driver logging, watching live to you on Totally Unscripted.
And it worked. Yay.
And it worked, yeah. So
I'm
I'm imagining like this would be super useful. I mean, you can even have a terminal within your VS Code, as we saw before. I don't know exactly how to set it up, but maybe you could have your logs right in your editor.
Certainly for those doing local script development, their world is increasing at a rapid pace. Is there anything else on the roadmap for Clasp that you can talk about?
Yeah, so I'm trying to, so the auto-completion that we saw before, so it works pretty nicely for things like Slides app and Spreadsheet app. But if you're trying to use an advanced service, like Slides dot presentation, it doesn't work that well, as you can see. And so one thing I'm working on is I'm creating these definitions so that you can use the advanced services. So let's see. could probably not use it directly, but let's see. Well, I'm not sure exactly how it works. It's too new. Yeah, well, so anyway, I'm basically trying to enable for auto-completion for advanced services, which allow you to use any Google REST API within Apps Script. So let's say there's not this Slides app or spreadsheet app. Maybe you're using some Google service like the Photos API or something that doesn't have one of these yet. Soon, hopefully, you can have auto-completion right in your editor.
Would that include Firebase?
So I'm not sure. It might. If it's a standard Google API, well.
Is it?
So
I take it you're just compiling the definition of the Google API Discovery Service?
Yeah, it uses the Google API Discovery Service, but it also, since there's also more APIs than just these ones that Google offers, I'm working on these initial ones.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think I have an issue. Well, anyway, if you're interested in contributing to the types to help support auto-completion locally, I'll post the issue that has the up-to-date information on the YouTube description.
And I guess if people are developing their own libraries for Apps Script, as long as they create the annotation file for it, they can get autocomplete for their own libraries as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm really excited for the day where there's we open Apps Script up to like their better libraries that provide auto-completion and are easily shareable, because I think once you have like great auto-completion and you have like maybe you just npm install a different library or service you want to use, you don't have to rewrite all your code. You can leverage the function or the demo that someone else has written.
That's really cool. So
please, if you have feature requests for Clasp, if you like Clasp or you haven't used Clasp for Apps Script because of one specific thing, please file an issue or upvote an issue, and I'll definitely try to implement it soon. I look at the top voted issues and try to get at those first.
As far as getting started for a newbie, I believe I saw some documentation, right, on Apps Script.
Yeah, so we have this beginner page that describes what is Apps Script, what can it do. Apps Script is JavaScript in Google's cloud that integrates with G Suite, as well as other Google APIs. Actually wrote a blog post that I'm doing about how I'm traveling around the US, as well as going to London to talk about Apps Script and sort of spread the word. What can it do? And how can it improve really automating your life within G Suite.
And there's
so if you're in one of these cities, please
sure.
come. Sure.
And there's to find out more about clasp, I know the GitHub repo's got lots of documentation as well. So like you've showed some of it as part of the show in terms of, and I Riël dipped into it as well in terms of setting up clasp and using TypeScript.
Yeah. So if you're interested in using clasp, I'd definitely check out the GitHub repo, right, at Google/clasp. And for more advanced documentation, there's a docs folder for how you can use TypeScript, or how you can, if you want to contribute to clasp, how you can develop clasp, add your own feature, etc.
So Steve, now that you've got Linux installed on your Pixelbook, are you going to start, you think, following the rest of this tips here and start using VS Code and Clasp?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I was referring to the Apps Script online documentation. There's guides, and then development environment, and there is command line interface using Clasp and using TypeScript.
Right.
So I guess I was referring to that as well as the GitHub. Yeah, definitely. I got to roll up my sleeves and get busy.
Well, Grant, that's I hope we've tantalized and educated our audience, and hopefully you're going to get a deluge of Clasp feature requests and hopefully contributions as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here.
Absolute pleasure, and I'm sure actually I feel given the rate that Clasp is developing right now, I think it won't be too long before we're having to have you back on to talk about some of the latest features.
Yeah, sure, anytime.
So thank you, Grant, for your time. I'm conscious that I've got some editing to do for this show in terms of Riël's installation, but stuff, we'll fast forward some of that for you in the recording. And the next show we're going to have for Totally Unscripted is going to be slightly indifferent. We've actually pre-recorded something with Steve and myself, and was it Jason that we spoke to, Steve?
Yes.
So we're going to look at one of the Edu G Suite add-ons called Totally. So that's going to be a pre-record, so it's going to be a slightly different format, but we hope you enjoy it. And there'll be more shows coming up in the future as well. So thanks for everyone who's contributed today, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Cool.
Bye.
See you, Stephen. Martin. Bye.